Good morning. Welcome once again to the Warsaw Distance Education. This is PLARHG History and Geography. Once again, my name is Jonathan and I am your teacher for this course. Just some household keeping announcements I'd like to announce right now. Uh, Next week, week 3, on Tuesday, I will be away since I'm going to be visiting Sandy Lake for a community visit. So one or two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to pre-record my lesson and just play it at the same time, or I'm going to switch time slot with another teacher and conduct my live lesson in the evening, probably around at the 6 o'clock time slot. So no final announcement has been confirmed yet, but just keep in mind that next week, week 3, lesson 1, on Tuesday of next week, I'm going to be absent. So again, either I'm going to pre-record my lesson and play at the same normal time, which is 9 a.m. Central Time, or I'm going to do my live lesson and switch time slot with another teacher and do my lesson in the evening. I should be back from Sandy Lake in the evening, and I should be able to come back and switch time slot and do my live lesson then. I will make an announcement on my Facebook page. I'll make a little Facebook status about it, but just to let you guys know, my class know, and all my students know that next Tuesday I will be absent as I'm visiting Sandy Lake for my community visit. All right, so again, this is week 2, class 2. Um, so I'm gonna continue off where we left off last class. So just a little recap of what we did last class was that we looked at Canada and its involvement in at the end of World War One. So we looked at conscription, we looked at the income war tax, what the Canadian government did with Robert Borden did. We also looked at, like I said, at the end of World War One, there was a Treaty of Versailles signed. In that Treaty of Versailles, there was a guilt clause, blaming Germany for causing the war and had to give back all the land and pay for damages. World War One ended on November 11th, 1918. So just remember that as like a Remembrance Day. It's a day that we reflect and honor all the men and women that served in the war. I also talked about the League of Nations, where numerous countries got together and formed these organizations in order to prevent future wars from happening in the future. Then we went over again assignment 2, all the questions. Again, assignment 1 should now be completed. Assignment 2 should be completed. Last class we also talked about, we started a new section on the 1920s and 1930s and Canada's involvement. So during the 1920s, it was like the decade of hope. New technology started to establish. We got the telephone, the automobile, the radio. We had advancement in technology and medicine. This was exciting times for exciting people. The upper class, the middle class people saw this as an opportunity where they can afford this new technology. However, women and the working class still had to struggle for equal rights, struggle for money and food. So that was the same for them, not much change. We also looked at the Great Depression, which started in New York with the stock market crash. This led to devastating effects in the Canadian economy in terms of jobs and in terms of people's lives. So people lost their jobs, company went bankrupt, 1/3 of Canadians lost their jobs. Farmers too had a difficult time. So even though this was a decade of hope, there's still struggles. We talked about a severe drought that happened in Western Canada, where there was for an extended long period of time there was no rainfall. So all the land and all the agriculture, all the crops, they were all dried out. They couldn't grow. All the soil was not fertilized. We also had the grasshopper, which kind of like a superbug where they just traveled in millions in packs together, eating all the crops that were able to grow. So basically, all the farmers had to rely on luck if they wanted to grow any crops. People couldn't farmers who couldn't afford fuel had to hook their farm animals to pull their cars. This was also known as the Bennett buggy. Again, this is all information that we covered from last class. I'm just briefly, quickly going over. Lastly, last class we talked about political concerns of women in the early 20th century. We talked about prohibition, where women, groups of women got together to form a group called the temperance movement. This group were, mainly white middle class, based on their religious belief, wanted to get women to be able to vote in the federal and provincial elections. They want to improve Canadian societies in their point of view. They want to improve hospitals, schools, prisons. But because of this, the Canadian government really ignored them. They don't really take into account their point of view. So basically, temperance movement women groups, they really strive for being able to gain the right to vote. So that they can change society in their point of view. Also talk about all the different provinces, how they, during different times, different years, they were able to vote. Women finally got to vote federally in 1917. I also talked about, Aboriginal and people of race couldn't really vote until many years later. Uh, and then I went over a little chart about outlining how women's rights changed over the years. Then we went into assignment 3. Assignment 3 is pretty big assignment. It's out 29 marks, so it might take you some time to complete it. But all the information, like I mentioned many times before, all the information is outlined in your textbook. So if you read your textbook, go through your textbook, all the answers are outlined in there as well. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. There's many ways you can contact me. Again, and once you have finished and completed assignment, please get it to me. Either email it to me, fax it to me, get your DEC to scan it, send it to me. I'll mark it. I can check you out, make sure that you're on the right track, and I can also give you feedback as well. Alrighty. So today, with week 2, class 2, we're going to start a brand new lesson. So what we all talked about in the past was lesson 1, Canada's history and involvement from the early 20th century, from 1900 to the end of World War One. So now we're going to kind of switch gears. We talked about the 20s and the 30s. So now we're going to switch gears a bit and talk about the 40s and the 50s, World War II, and such. So your learning expectation, well, what you'll be able to complete after lesson 2 is that you'll have an understanding of Canada's role in World War II and Japanese involvement affecting Japanese Canadians. Okay, so in lesson 2, we're going to look at World War II and Japanese involvement affecting Japanese Canadians. Your learning goals, you'll be able to learn how Canada's involvement in World War II is different from the previous war. So yes, World War II took place, but there's some aspect that's slightly different compared to World War One. You'll also learn what the Canadian government did for Canadians during the war, during the Second World War, I should say. And finally, you'll learn about Japanese involvement and how it affected Japanese Canadians. We'll talk more about how Japanese Canadian will try to treat it slightly different compared to everyone else based on their race and ethnicity. So those are our learning goals and our expectation that we're going to be covering for lesson 2 for this course. All right. So like I just said, I'm going to take a look at World War II and beyond. So as you can see from my smartboard, for those watching at home, World War II took place in 1939 to 1945. That was the time period. So in 1939, Canada found itself involved in another world conflict. As we all know, World War II. Britain declared war on Germany, but Canada, since it was kind of like an own nation at this moment, was able to declare war itself. They didn't have to follow the British Empire or what Britain did. Canada was now seen as an own separate nation, own separate country, and that we can fight for stay our own voice and stand for what we believe in a way. Canada, like Britain and France, became concerned when Germany and Italy were becoming more and more aggressive towards the neighboring countries. During this time period, Germany had a new leader named Adolf Hitler. Um, he saw the world as Germany the way. Germany was the best. Anything besides Germany wasn't in his mindset of warring his nation. So I'm gonna pause for a bit. I'm gonna give you some bit of background information of how World War II started. You may be asking yourself like, okay, so World War II took place, but how did we get to that point? What happened? We know what happened, what took place during World War One, what led to those conflicts, but what exactly happened to that led to World War II? So on the line, we got Fort Hope again, tuning in and listening. Thank you again for radio in and participating. If you can hear me, uh, is there any names or any students at Fort Hope that can hear me right now? I can jot down your names and check you off for participating.
Delilah.
Delilah, okay. Thank you, Delilah, for tuning in.
Delilah.
Delilah?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anyone else besides Delilah?
Yeah. Nate.
What was that? Sorry, what was your name again?
Nate.
Nate?
Night.
Knight. So we got Delilah and Knight. Awesome. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and listening and participating. Again, if any questions, please let me know. Just jump in, ask, and I'll do my best to answer all those questions. Okay? So like I said, you may be wondering how World War II started. What led to all this drama, all this conflict? So as we learned in the past, after World War One, the Treaty of Versailles was signed. As you recall, the Treaty of Versailles basically blamed Germany for all his hostility and this causing the war, and had to give it back all the land that they acquired, had to pay for damages. Yeah, so it really blamed Germany for causing World War One. Because of this, Germany went into a deep depression. They had unemployment. Another factor that led to this unemployment and depression in Germany was the stock market crash too. As you remember, in 1929, the New York stock market crash that not only affected lives in Canada for Canadians, but also affected lives in Europe as well. And Germany was affected by this as well. Like I said, Germany had a new leader at this point. His name was Adolf Hitler. Hitler gave voice to the Germans to give them hope. Hitler promised the people in the country of Germany that they can once again be powerful and big and strong and even bigger if he became in power. And the Germans believed him, and as a result, they voted Hitler into power in 1930. So now Germany has a new leader, new ruler named Hitler. He was the leader of the Nazi Party. So once Hitler was in power, he created lots of false advertisement, promoting Jews, cheated the country back in World War One. This was not true, but he made tons of advertisement, kind of brainwashed German society, and many Germans believed him. Like I just talked about, in terms of Hitler, his mindset was that German was the best. Anything besides Germany and Germans were not the best. So therefore, the Jews was not the best. Um, like I said, Germany wanted to rule the world based on the German perspective. Um, Again, during this time period, we have another group form. They were called the Axis power. So countries like Germany and Italy teamed up, and later Japan joined that group as well. So the Axis power consisted of Japan, Italy, and Germany. So again, like I said, Germany shrunk in terms of the land it acquired after World War One based on the Treaty of Versailles. Um, as a result, again, Germany and Hitler, they wanted to again still acquire as much land as possible. So what happened was that Germany and Hitler, they invaded or they entered Austria. They invaded Czechoslovakia. Um, Again, so according to the Treaty of Versailles, no country in Europe should be invading or entering other countries and such. But Germany did this. They invaded Austria and Czechoslovakia. So it's kind of like set up like an alarm bell. The rest of Europe was like, hey, what's going on here? We just signed a Treaty of Versailles saying that you can't do this. You shouldn't be invading other nations and countries. So Britain and other countries in Europe saw this as like a threat. So basically, Britain told Germany, they're like, hey, don't invade Poland. You shouldn't do this. You stop this right now, kind of thing. And guess what? Germany didn't listen, and they invaded Poland. So because of this, this led to World War II. So Britain declared war on Germany on September 3rd, 1939. And I believe France joined Britain as well, and they declared war on Germany. So that's basically what led to World War II. So now let's backtrack a bit and talk about what happened back home in Canada. Uh, so, like I said, in the 20s and 30s, Canada was in a deep depression. So many Canadians joined the war efforts simply because of the Great Depression. Many Canadians joined the war effort simply because the Great Depression left them out of work. Okay, the stock market crashed during the depression. There's lots of unemployment at this time period. Therefore, there's really not much to do in terms of the workforce. And now that World War II happened, many Canadians, they volunteered and they went into battle. People left Canada also brought to have to work. So people back home who didn't work, they produced food, they produced weapons. Again, a lot of similar aspect that took place in World War One happened in World War Two. So Canada produced food, weapons. They, because of their incredible ability to produce weapons and food for the Allies, during World War II, Canada was known as the arsenal of democracy. Okay, you'll see that term again, arsenal of democracy. Put a little star beside that. Again, this is something that you'll see again on your next assignment. Okay, so pay really close attention in your textbook for keywords or key terms that are bolded. Okay, if they're bolded or in capitals, those are key terms you want to look for because they may be seen again on your assignment. Okay, so Canada joined World War II simply because of the Great Depression, left them out of jobs. People at home who didn't go to war produced lots of foods and weapons and aids to supply for Canadian troops. Because of this, Canada was known as the arsenal of democracy for helping the war efforts. Okay, so the next section. So the next section that we're going to talk about is Camp X. Camp X. So what is Camp X? So Canada also had a commando training institution known as Camp X. Camp X. It was a secret base near Oshawa, Ontario. So which is, I don't know, near Southern Ontario, bit west of Toronto. Okay, that region. During this time period, there's a secret training institution called Camp X. Camp X. Okay, you will see this term again on your assignment. Okay. Um, it was established on December 6, 1941. It was used to train secret agents, spies, and assassins to fight the Germans. Okay. So what's also unique that I'm gonna talk about Camp X was that more than 500 secret agent trained at this institution. Okay, so Camp X lasted from 1941 to 1946. It was the first secret training institution in North America. Uh, People from all over the world came here to train and to learn. They learned about secret codes, how to get on and get off a moving train, how to enter buildings, learn about different weapons. Prior to World War One, we didn't have any secret agent or espionage agency. They also learn about how to cross landscape at nighttime. Again, use different weapons like how to kick, punch, jab, different techniques, climbing cliffs. In terms of Canada, the RCMP police, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, train at this institution. In terms of United States, the FBI also trained at this institution called Camp X. So this is something that established during this time period that Canadians did. So Camp X, okay, so it's agents, spies, and assassin trained here to fight the Germans during World War II. All right, moving along towards the slide in your textbook. Again, during this time period, the Canadian government, our Prime Minister was Mackenzie King. Prime Minister King took measures to ensure Canadians had the basic needs to meet, to ensure Canadians had their basic needs met. Okay, so again, during this time period, again, we're kind of still in this little depression mode mindset, how we don't have many jobs, can't really afford food, shelter, and such. So Mackenzie King was a really significant figure because he established three things. Okay, he established the first one was the Unemployment Insurance Act. Okay, again, this is significant because as you'll see this again on your assignment. Okay, so Prime Minister Mackenzie King, he established three things. Okay, three things. Number one, he established the Unemployment Insurance Act in 1940. So what the Unemployment Insurance Act allowed Canadians to do was that people that were out of jobs were allowed to collect unemployment pay period so that they could provide funding or income for them. So people that were out of work were allowed to collect unemployment for a period of time, provided that they had work before they became unemployed. So basically, again, this is a depression. People had jobs, but then again, they lost a job. So if you can prove that you had a job before, you can collect the Unemployment Insurance Act. You can get some income coming back. Okay, that's one thing that Mackenzie King established. Number two, I'll put it in red, was the Family Allowance Act. Family Allowance Act that took place in 1944. So what the Family Allowance Act states was that family with children receive allowance called something called the baby bonus. Baby bonus. In order to, provide the basic needs like clothing, food, and shelter. So basically, the more children you had, the more baby bonus you can have in a way. So Mackenzie King established the Family Allowance Act. Basically, parents with children can also receive allowance called a baby bonus. You'll get something called a baby bonus so that family can provide their children with the basic necessities such as food, shelter, and clothing. And lastly, number 3, what Mackenzie King established during this time period was the victory bonds. The victory bonds. So the victory bonds were money borrowed from Canadians at a low interest rate. Money borrowed from Canadians at a low interest rate. So basically, Canadians during this time period, this also happened in World War One, by the way, was that Canadians can purchase something called the victory bonds. It's basically to try to raise money in order to help fund the war efforts. And once the war was over, you can take your victory bonds and you can cash them in and gain interest rate from it in a way. Okay? In order to raise money for war effort, when the war was won, the bonds could be cashed in for the principal purchase interest. All right. Again, lots of key information again here. You'll see all this information again on your next assignment. All right. Just quickly, I want to talk about what the Canadian government also did during this time period. Mackenzie King. So Mackenzie King also had a referendum. So what that means was that he asked the Canadian, he posed the questions, and Canadians had to vote either yes or no, or whether they were in favor or they were not in favor or they disagree. So as you recall from World War One, there was this controversial topic of conscription. Conscription. Again, we'll see this term again, conscription. So anyone over at Fort Hope or online listening and tune in, does anyone remember what conscription was? Can anyone tell me what conscription was? You saw this term on your, I believe, on your previous assignment. What was conscription? Can anyone tell me what conscription was? Okay, well, conscription was basically when the Canadian government forced Canadians to sign up and go to war. They had no choice. The Canadian government forced them to go to war. Again, they had no choice, no to say, you just had to go to war. Again, this controversial topic came up again in World War II. So, but Prime Minister Mackenzie King did it in a slightly different way. He had a referendum. He posed the question to Canadians: should we have conscription? Should I force Canadians to go to War II? So basically, what happened is that many Canadians said they're like, yes, they were in favor. No, we should go to war. We should support our country. We should go to battle. However, that same mindset of French Quebec Canadians, they disagree. They didn't want to go to war. They didn't want to go to battle. So basically, since many Canadians were in favor, Mackenzie King didn't have to force conscriptions onto Canadian lives at this point. Okay, conscription was enforced. However, like I said, French Canadians and citizens in Quebec, they opposed this. They were known as the conscientious objectors. Okay. So basically, like I said, they opposed this based on personal religious beliefs. So, for example, Mennonites, Jehovah Witnesses, they believe that Christians should be neutral in world conflict. So they didn't want to go to war or fight in battles based on their personal beliefs. So someone who refused to go to war based on their religious, moral, ethical, and personal beliefs. They didn't want to take place in this. Okay. And then you'll see here it says go to assignment 4 in your student workbook. So now you're able to complete assignment 4. Assignment 4. So I'm going to quickly go over assignment 4 in a bit of detail so that everyone's on track. So students who are watching or listening or tuning in, if you have your textbook, your workbook. Your workbook just has all your assignments in it. You may want to turn to assignment 4. This is, I'm going to quickly go over it. If you don't have it in front of you, that's okay. But I'm just going to read over the questions, explain what I'm looking for. So assignment 4 is out of 14 marks. Again, nothing new with your assignments. Again, writing complete sentences, full details, write neatly, legible, clearly, so I can read it, so that way I can mark it. So question number 1 states, what was the main reason Canadian citizens joined the Second World War? What was the main reason Canadian citizens joined the Second World War? Okay, that's out 2 marks. Question number 2, why was Canada known as the arsenal of democracy? Okay, we talked about that today as well. So look for that keyword, arsenal of democracy. What was it? Why was Canada known for it? 2 marks. What was Camp X? Okay, question number 3, what was Camp X? I gave you a bit more details on it based on my lesson in my lecture. But again, you can just state what was stated in your textbook as well. Okay, again, what was Camp X? Question number 3 is out of 2 marks. 2 marks. Okay, 2 marks. So I'm not always looking for a one-word answer. The more details you provide, the better marks you will get. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so what was Camp X? Number 3. Question number 4. It's a big one. It's out of 6 marks. So lots of details. Okay, 6 marks. So make sure you read question number 4 carefully. In order to ensure Canadians had their basic needs met, the Canadian government led by Prime Minister W.L. Mackenzie King took specific steps. Name 3 measures created to provide financials to families and describe their purpose. Okay, so in other words, I'm looking for 3 things. Okay, in your answer, you should have 3 things that Mackenzie King established or he created in order to help finance Canadian families. Okay, so you can break it up like 1 was, 2, and 3. You can write what he established, and so I need the name of it. And then you can state what was his purpose in full, and again in full sentences again. Okay, just a little way to break it up in a way. Okay, so 3 things Mackenzie King created to help finance families during this time period to meet their basic needs and describe their purposes. Don't just list them. Tell me their names and describe them in details. Okay, so 1 mark each for the 3 names, and a mark again for describing its purposes. Question number 5, the last one. What were consciousness's objectives? Okay, something I just talked about. Again, out of 2 marks. Okay, and that's assignment 4. Okay, so again, after this lesson, after I'm done teaching, after I'm done lecturing, you can complete assignment 4. And again, once it's done, please get it to me and I will mark it. Okay? So we do got a bit of time left, so I'm gonna continue on. Hopefully I can finish this today as well. So that was so what I just talked about was basically the start of World War II and Canada's involvement in terms of government, what the government did for Canadians during World War II. So now I'm going to talk about kind of the next section, um, Japanese involvement and Japanese Canadian. Japanese involvement and Japanese Canadian. So how were Japanese, Canadian, or Japan involved in World War II, and how did it impact it and influence Canadians during this time period? All right, so back to my little story. So I'm gonna pause for a bit. So like I said, in September 3rd, 1939, Britain and France declare war on Germany because Germany decided to invade so many of its neighboring countries, which is a big no-no. Therefore, France and Britain declare war on Germany. Germany couldn't, in a way, invade Britain in a sense because Britain, as a country, as a nation, is kind of like an island. It's surrounded by seas and oceans, so that it wasn't easy necessary for the Germans to invade Britain. That was kind of their saving grace why Britain wasn't invaded. However, Germany did invade Russia. I believe the Germans and the Russians during this time period, they had an agreement where basically saying that Germany and Russia, they wouldn't invade one another, but Germany broke that agreement and they invaded Russia. So again, you'll maybe think to yourself, how was Japan involved in this? How was Japan involved in all this? So bit of background details. This is not in your textbook or any of my slides. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis, quick review of what happened that led to, how Japan was involved in all this. So during this time period, during the Second World War, the war already started. It was Germany versus Britain / France. Italy was involved as well, but the U.S. or the United States at this time period, they were neutral. They were not involved in any of the conflict. They just watched on. Okay, they didn't get involved on just yet. However, the United States, they did supply aids to Britain, and they cut off ties with Japan. Okay, so even though the United States wasn't involved in the Second World War at this time period, but they were supplying aids to Britain, and it kind of cut off ties with Japan. Japan didn't like this, so what happened was that in 1941, Japan planned a surprise attack on the United States on Pearl Harbor, which is a Navy base where they bombed Pearl Harbor. It's kind of like a surprise attacks on the United States. The United States didn't see this coming; they were unexpected, but Japan bombed the United States at Pearl Harbor. This was like a message sent from Japan to the United States saying that, hey, you shouldn't be supporting Britain. You shouldn't be entering the war as well. But obviously that didn't happen. It kind of made the United States angry and upset because they bombed them. As a result, the United States declared war on Japan, and now the United States now involved in the Second World War. So, and as like I said, the United States declared war on Japan for bombing Pearl Harbor, which made the United States upset. And because of that, since Japan was linked with team up with Germany, Germany declared war on the United States as well. Okay, that's kind of what happened and kind of why Japan was involved. Obviously, what happened down to south in terms of the United States with our neighbor, it kind of influenced Canadian society as well. So during the war, Japan and Italy was also allied with Germany. The Canadian government became suspicious that those living in Canada had Japanese, Italian, and Germany's ancestors become spies on the opposing sides. So basically, anyone um, of different race or ethnicity, such as Japan, Germany, and Italy, um, they were not treated the same as everyone else. Um, they were treated differently in terms of like discrimination and with racism. Okay, so all the Japanese living in Canada, all the Japanese Canadian, the Canadians saw them as like like a threat in terms of Canadian society. They thought that they would become spies on what we're doing and worked against us. So they were treated differently with racism and discrimination. Okay, so as you can see from the slide right here, there's a little article, treatment of the Japanese Canadian. You can read that in your textbook. I'm not going to go through that, but the main point was that they were treated differently. They were treated differently. Okay, you can see a little image of the bombing of Pearl Harbor right here that the Japanese did. So thousands of Japanese Canadians were sent there, treated differently with racism, not treated with equal rights compared to everyone else. Japanese Canadian, they were moved away from the West Coast and had to live in the British Columbia interior. Okay, so there was a large amount of Japanese Canadian population living along British Columbia West Coast along the ocean, but now they had to be moved into the interior, which is like the mainland. Um, the husband, let me fix that. So their husbands were separated from the family. All the properties were taken by the Canadian government then all the properties were taken and sold to help finance and fund the war efforts. This changed everything. So they were treated differently. Um, their husbands, like I said, they were separated from the families. All the properties were taken, and the Canadian government took the properties and sold them. And yeah, this is basically what happened to the Japanese Canadians since they were seen different. Since they were seen different. Um, Also, some little background information as well. Like the Jewish population in Canada was also treated differently in terms of anti-Semitism. Again, this is nothing new. It became a mainstream culture during the century, during this time period. In terms of Canada, again, racism is a big factor. Uh, not just Japanese Canadian, not just with the Jewish population, but anyone with other nationality or different ethnic race, they were treated differently by Canadians during this time period. There was a lot of, like I said, World War II took place, a lot of conflict, a lot of nation involved, and all these people of race and different nationalism and ethnicity, they were treated differently. They were treated differently. Again, if you can see on my smartboard screen, it just in your textbook as well. It just goes on about a few different articles about how Japanese Canadians were mistreated during this time period. Again, I'm not gonna read the article, but you can make sure you read it on your own time in the textbook. Again, the sign is broken. Another way how Japanese Canadian was treated, how the Japanese bombed the United States Pearl Harbor impacted Canada, and how it was impacted. You got some story about people's journals and diaries. Again, this is all in your textbook, something that you can read. Please make sure you read as well. It gives you a lot of background information. It gives you another perspective and sense as well. All right, so we got a bit of time, so I'm gonna try to finish this off today, and that way you can start assignment 5 as well. So, Canadian role and Canada's role near the end of the war. So we're approaching the end of the Second World War. So what happened? What happened? All right. Another term that went throughout there is the Holocaust. Holocaust. Okay, this is something that you'll see again on your next assignment. So what was the Holocaust? So during the war, Hitler and the Germans tried to eliminate all the Jewish population. Anyone Jewish, all the Jews, they want to eliminate them. As you recall, as you remember, I talked about earlier, during this time period, Hitler and the Germans saw nothing besides themselves. They saw anything but German was the best. Anything outside that was not in their viewpoints. So they want to eliminate all the Jewish population. So the Nazi and so like Hitler and his government killed the Jews in camps. They want to get rid of all the Jewish population in Europe. Like I said, this is something that they wanted to do based on not because of their race and their different beliefs and their religious. So that's a Nazi Germany. So Nazi killed Jews in camps. They wanted to get rid of all the Jewish population in Europe. In the end, 6 million Jews were killed. This was known as the Holocaust. Okay, in other words, it's like a giant genocide, mass killing, trying to eliminate one particular ethnicity from the world population. How was this done? Was that they were in camps. The properties were confiscated. They were sent to a gas chamber where they basically suffocated. Some were just shot, killed, murdered. This was something known as the Holocaust. Something that's not bright in terms of history looking back, but the Jewish were trying to be wiped out. So I'm gonna try to briefly wrap this up because I know we're almost running out of time. So how did World War II ended? How did World War II ended? So in 1944, something known as D-Day. D-Day took place on June 6, 1944. D-Day. So basically, Canadians, France, Britain, they sent all the troops. They landed on, I believe, Normandy, and they just fought with the Germans, fought with the Axis power, and because of this, they kind of pushed the Germans force back. Again, months later on, Britain, France, the Canadian troops, they continued to fight in battles against the Germany, and we started to winning in a way. And because of this, Hitler sensed the defeat. Defeat was at hand. He was going to lose. He knew he was going to lose. He couldn't match what was being offered, so he committed suicide. Yep. So, like I said, Germany, Britain, and Canada, they invaded Germany. Hitler sensed defeat, so he shot himself. He committed suicide. And weeks later, the Nazi government and party, they surrendered. This is in 1945. This is known as VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. So on May 8th, 1945, the war between Britain with the United States against the Germans, it was over. It was done. However, the war was still on, as the United States was still fighting war against Japan. Japan was still a threat at this point. So what happened was that the United States, they decided to do something that was just crazy, something that can be unethical in a sense, something that could be controversial. Looking back in terms of history, was that they dropped a nuclear atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing thousands of Japanese instantly. So nuclear bomb, it's a massive nuclear bomb that they dropped on Hiroshima and just pretty much killed everything instantly. Yeah, so the United States dropped one bomb on Hiroshima, but Japan still didn't surrender at this point. So the United States dropped a second bomb on Nagasaki. So we got Hiroshima, and the second was on Nagasaki in Japan. And again, another atomic bomb wiped out thousands, to kill thousands of Japanese instantly. And at this point, Japan finally surrendered, and the war was finally over. It was finally over. So that's pretty much how the war wrapped up. So again, we're almost run out of time, so I'm gonna quickly go through assignment 5 so that you have something to do and complete as well. So assignment 4 and assignment 5 can now be completed. Again, assignment 5 is pretty short, it's only out of 10 marks. Question number 1, why did the Canadian government focus attention on its Japanese citizens following the bombing? Why did the Canadian government focus attention on its Japanese citizens following the bombing of Pearl Harbor? Again, like I said, Japan planned a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in the United States, and just kind of made the Canadian government like no sense of more attention on the Japanese citizens living in Canada. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, give specific details about the mistreatment Japanese Canadians endured from the Canadian government following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Again, they were mistreated. How? Give me some examples, okay? Give me some examples of how they were mistreated. Question number 3, what was the Holocaust? What was the Holocaust? Okay, 2 marks. Next question was outline the events in 1944 and 45 that brought the end of the Second World War. So there were steps, there were events that took place that led to the ending of the Second World War. Briefly outline some of the events that led to the ending of the Second World War. And I'm gonna stop it at that. Okay, so again, that's all 3 marks. Again, so just a little recap. So today, we talked a lot about Canada and its involvement in the Second World War. You can now complete assignment 4 and assignment 5. Just some household items before I go is that next week 3, class 1 on Tuesday, I am going to be absent as I'm traveling to Sandy Lake for my community visit. Again, I'm either going to pre-record my lesson and play it at the same time slot as we normally have this class, or I'm going to switch time slot with another teacher and conduct my live lesson in the evening. Okay, so just be aware of that. Okay, so if you don't hear me in the morning on Tuesday or hear history and geography lessons, then you can expect it to be in the evening. Again, I'll make an announcement or I'll post a Facebook status letting everyone